the big city has gotten boring for people.
Let's talk about this UFO whistleblower. I mean, there's so much content swarming out there. It wasn't that long ago when it was the freaks who wanted to believe in the UFOs, and now it's the government that wants you to believe in the UFOs. It's very difficult for even someone, you know, whose job it is to kind of track this stuff, to separate out, to come up with any kind of coherent mental map to make sense of what's real and what's not. What's your experience been with this whistleblower guy? And I don't know, what advice can you give to Americans trying to dare to understand what's happening?
So I spent 10 hours with him in Colorado, deep in conversation, met his wife, found him very compelling, impressive, intelligent. He's a 36-year-old guy who has served at the highest levels of military intelligence, briefed presidents. He's testified before Congress. And his story is that he did a interdepartmental investigation of the UFO phenomena. Because he had so many clearances, he was able to go here and there throughout the government, throughout the military, throughout the intelligence world, and find out what was going on and pull all these compartments together and file a report. And he did that, and his conclusion was that we had all these craft hidden away, that there's been a craft retrieval program that's gone on, you know, since actually the 1930s, that there are even bodies that have been recovered, that there may be some forms of agreement between our government and these other non-human intelligences, NHIs, that's the new word. And so he told me this whole story, a lot of it off the record, and I came away feeling like somebody had thrown a sort of mind grenade into my skull, because it's a reality melting prospect that there are other forms of life, some of them supposedly interdimensional, non-corporeal, a lot more like spirits maybe than ET, that we've known about this, that we've put our sort of best defense contractors on the problem of exploiting the technology and possibilities that have been introduced by their presence. And there's a promise that we'll get to know more. I mean, there always is with UFOs. We are always a year away from the big reveal. But he assured me that that reveal is kind of got a schedule now. And in the next year will be accelerated in a way that the whole world will find astonishing. So what do I think of it all? Well, because I can't see any evidence of it, except in his narration of the thing and you know, his assurances that various things exist, I can't, you know, I can't handicap the likelihood that we're all going to be convinced of this, but I will tell you that the information operation, whether or not it's backed by real craft and so on, is serious, very serious, and it's going to grow more intense. You know, you've already seen Steven Spielberg has a UFO documentary, I think on Netflix. I think there's another series being contemplated or in production about some of the first abductees. And so they're going to roll this out. And whatever the truth is, and whatever the actual nature of the phenomena, you're going to have to deal with it. You're going to be asked to believe, and you're going to be asked to believe by our authorities. You know, they act as though they're all in conflict. Like there are some parties that want to get out the truth, and there are others that are stopping them. And that drama adds interest. But my sense of it is that there's kind of a consensus at some level about rolling out more of this. And the theater is a little distracting. The powers that be have decided we should know more. What if it's all a fairy tale? What if it's what if this is the first, government issued fairy tale? I mean, it wouldn't be the first, but the biggest. That has strange implications. It means that our very belief systems about ourselves, our past, and our universe are being re-engineered at the highest level. And you thought, if you want to be conspiratorial, paranoid, and skeptical about this whole thing, you would conclude that a substitute religion is being prepared for mankind, and even a substitute science, because I happen to know that what is set to come out involves, things like the genetic manipulation of the human being through time and so on. I mean, really weird stuff.
You're sitting there with this grown adult male.
Yeah.
He's married. From what you're telling me, it sounds like he didn't have, like boxes of moldering files and like old pieces of pizza hanging off of his desk.
No, he's not Matthew McConaughey in True Detective, smoking and sweating. And, you've got to understand. No, this is a very poised, 6'5", 6'6", Air Force veteran, actually with a gun on his hip underneath his shirt. He's had problems. He's had people harass him and so on. He's got security concerns.
Did he at any point unzip his skin suit and reveal a lizard underneath?
No, I mean, Dave Grusch is a kid.
He just sounds very calm, discussing things that many people would associate with the complete meltdown of civilization as we know it.
He's a guy from Pittsburgh, a working class guy from Pittsburgh, whose dad was a car dealer, whose family went bankrupt a few times, and got a scholarship, or actually used military, benefits to go to the University of Pittsburgh, and studied physics, joined the Air Force, fought in Afghanistan, rose to various positions of authority in these satellite intelligence services, and then did this investigation, left the government, and made it his mission to inform the world of what's really going on. And I had a pretty ironclad agreement with him not to talk about the things that he was not yet cleared to talk about. But he seemed normal in every way. I mean, hyper normal, it would be almost the word. He was like, it was like talking to the Hardy Boys, the All-American Boy, the Wheaties box guy. He was the opposite of some kind of, obsessive, skin-scratching nerd who, had seen the light. He was just telling me this as though he'd been out in the field and seen a big deer and said, there's some big deer out there, except they're aliens.
Yeah, here's the funny thing to me about this is who would not be surprised by the news that interdimensional beings, some of whom might not have our best interests in mind, have visited us and maybe extracted certain kinds of agreements or payments or whatever. Ancient Egyptians would probably not have been shocked to hear that might be true. Certainly early Christians would not be shocked by the idea that interdimensional beings with perhaps malign intent were among us. Even some Christians to this very day. And probably, a host of other civilizations also have their own sort of myths and legends about these kinds of beings. So how much of breaking news is this really?
I like to visit the Hopi Reservation in Arizona maybe once or twice a year. And the Hopi, people might remember, have a religion that involves these Kachina figures, figures that represent otherworldly gods, demons, and so on. And when the people wear these costumes, they sort of are transformed into these figures which come from the sky, according to their legend, or come from these mountains near the reservation. And I don't think they'd be surprised at all. They'd find it absolute confirmation. I think what they're surprised by on the Hopi Reservation are all the false gods of the modern world, you know. So it's not just sort of indigenous people or ancient people like the Egyptians and so on. It's pretty much everyone except modern America who would not be surprised if there are beings of another kind. I mean, you've got this sort of the intellectual leading light of the UFO movement is a French scientist named Jacques Vallée, who's written books about the relationship between the fairy religions of Northern Europe and the UFO phenomena. He's basically saying gremlins and trolls and, gray aliens seem to come from the same source. Whether that source is the human mind, another dimension, or another planet, he fudges. But in a weird way, the UFO thing is a return to a more primitive understanding of our place among a host of beings. I mean, this whole idea that people are alone on this planet and in this universe, the only intelligence, is a very new one. I mean, I defy you to find it in ancient literature. It's not, there are gods in the Iliad. Every scripture worth its salt over a certain age. It's really only us in the maybe last couple of centuries that think we're alone.
Well, and just this very old wisdom that people are incredibly malleable and really susceptible to influence, whether it's from spectral forces or from something more quotidian. I want to